I'm Nick Bailey. I'm a co-founder of From Day One. This is a forum on corporate values. I'm looking forward to hosting today's webinar. Before I do, though, I want to ask you a favor. It's been quite a year of change, and just like you and really everyone in the world, at From Day One, we're working daily to process and understand all the change that's been going on in the workplace so we can create better content like this webinar, as well as our conferences, the journalism that we provide. We've put together a series of surveys on all sorts of topics we think will be relevant to you and your job. We really want to know what you think. So during this webinar, right now, I'm going to share two links with you. These are straightforward, anonymous reader surveys. One's on HR leadership, one is on age diversity. I'm putting them in the chat right now. I'm just going to do that. So take a look, open them up in a browser window, have them handy. You can fill them out while I'm doing this intro or during the webinar or anytime today and drop them in. We'd love to hear from you. We spend a lot of time kind of staring at the screen and speaking out into the void, and we don't get to hear from you as much as we'd like to. So this is a great opportunity for you to share what you think with us. So anyways, now onto our webinar. Today, we're going to be exploring a topic that focuses on pay and the workforce. The title for today's session is On-Demand Pay in a Responsible Way. According to Gartner Research, 20% of employers with majority hourly workforces are going to offer on-demand pay by the end of 2022. 3 out of the 4 largest employers in the United States already do this. However, companies rushing in the on-demand pay bandwagon need to be mindful about this approach. That's because offering this alone is not enough to boost retention, could even make employees dependent on early pay. So what does the research say about the impact of on-demand pay on employee retention, on productivity, on financial health? How can employers like you ensure that it benefits their bottom line and helps build a more resilient workforce? Our sponsor for today's webinar is Even, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about them. Even's responsible on-demand pay platform helps employers do right by their employees, helps them build goodwill, helps them achieve long-term financial wellness together. Even's mission is to help companies reimagine the way that they pay so people can live the lives that they want. Lastly, a couple quick logistical items for today. This webinar is being recorded. It'll be available on demand soon after the event. You can look out for an email in about 24 hours from now with the link. That's an email from us to you that'll have the link, and it'll also have the information on how you can get professional development credits for this session. Those come from SHRM, Society of Human Resource Management, and HRCI. And those will be in that email that you get tomorrow. Look out for a written account of this conversation soon, usually within a week or so, on our website at fromday1.co. That's FROMDAYONE.co. And finally, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Lydia Dishman. Lydia is a business journalist. She reports and edits for Fast Company on tech and leadership. She's written for CBS Money Watch, Fortune, Popular Science, the New York Times, and many, many others, and has moderated many of our webinars, and we love her. Thanks so much, Lydia, for hosting today, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Nick. It's always a pleasure to be here with all of you. Thank you all for spending your hour with us and with Jon. I wanted to start by offering some context around the wealth gap and how that has changed over the past year. I'm citing Sylvia Allegretto, who's an economist and a co-chair of the Center on Wage and Employment Dynamics at UC Berkeley. And she writes that in early 2020, our response to the pandemic brought to a halt the longest economic expansion on record in the US. The COVID-driven recession continues to cause enormous pain and struggle for millions of workers and businesses. And part of that pain is because the wealth gap is growing. And for clarity, wealth is otherwise known as net worth. It's an accounting of assets minus liabilities. Allegretto says that according to data from the Survey of Consumer Finances, the cumulative wealth of the richest Americans was $2.96 trillion last year. The wealth held by these 400 people equated to the total wealth held by the entire bottom 58% of families in the United States. And that's even more nuanced when you consider race. The median wealth of Black families was just $24,100, or just 12.8% of what was held by whites. And for Latinx, it's 19.2% of white wealth. For perspective, it would take 12.8 million Black families to equal the wealth of Jeff Bezos and Walmart's Walton family combined. 12.8 million Black families. And as hourly wage earners, many workers from these underrepresented groups are on the wrong side of this massive wealth gap. But regardless of what kind of work they're doing. When employees are stressed about money, their engagement and productivity plummet. That's why some organizations have started offering financial tools as a benefit to assist employees with money management. But not all of these benefits are created equally. So here to discuss the finer points of on-demand pay with me is Jon Schlossberg. And by way of introduction, of course, tell us a little bit about yourself and talk a little bit about what on-demand pay for earned wages is and who's typically eligible to receive it.
Hi, Lydia. My name is Jon Schlossberg. I'm a co-founder and the executive chairman of Even. What is on-demand pay? What is early access to wages? Imagine that you don't have any money in your bank account and you're on your way to work and the gas needle, it's empty. This is an all too common occurrence today. Not only because income hasn't grown for the bottom 90% of earners over the last 4 decades, also because over that same time frame, the core elements of life got much more expensive relative to income growth: healthcare, education, housing, transportation, childcare. So you just don't have that much money left. And so it is a fairly common occurrence that people just don't have money in their bank account when they need it. Today, what a lot of Americans do when they need to put gas in their car and they don't have any money is they have to resort to predatory products like payday loans or letting their bank account overdraft, which is very expensive, or borrowing money from their uncle, which is predatory in a different way, an emotional way. And what earned wage access or on-demand pay, these are the same thing, by one nerdier name, one more normal name. What this is a way for people to get access to money that they have earned, but that hasn't been paid to them yet by virtue of the fact that it isn't payday, anytime they want, so that they can get access to liquidity in these really, frankly, desperate moments that doesn't cost an arm and a leg. I don't think a lot of folks realize, the average principal for a payday loan is $250. You're borrowing $250. The average cost for borrowing that $250 is $1,000. That's crazy. That's actually not even the reason it's predatory, but it's one of the reasons why it is very hard. It is very hard when you are early in your journey and you don't have a lot of generational wealth and life happens to you. It is very hard to make progress because of how expensive the solutions are. And on-demand pay is not in and of itself a perfect solution. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, today. But man, is it an important piece of the puzzle because it provides a much more affordable safety net.
Pre-pandemic, I was hearing a lot about how many Americans, especially the so-called middle class, live check to check.
Yeah.
Has that trend accelerated? Is it totally out of control now, or how are you seeing that?
I mean, in my opinion, it was totally out of control before. Depending on the research that you read, whether you read Pew or the Bureau of Labor Statistics or the Aspen Institute, somewhere between 60 to 75% of American families were living paycheck to paycheck at some point throughout the year before the pandemic. That's already out of control in my mind, because living paycheck to paycheck, what that means is that you're not saving any money. Like at the end of the pay cycle, you don't have any money left. And that's really bad, because not having any money in your bank account is really bad. Like, I just like using normal words to describe it because it's easier to understand. Not having any money in your bank account, it makes you very vulnerable, because everything in our society today costs money. And not only does it make you very vulnerable, it also prevents you from creating the life that you want for you and your family, because everything in life costs money, from applying to go to college to renting an apartment in a new city where there are better jobs. And so since the pandemic, I haven't seen any data that says that more families are living paycheck to paycheck. but I don't need data to answer is like a pretty common sense thing. I mean, there are fewer jobs. The jobs that are available tend to be much harder emotionally. And so you have a lot more unemployed people and a lot of people making less than they were because they're choosing to, to take a job just because there's one available. So they're making less money. You have many of the same expenses, if not more expenses now, because you're dealing with a new set of problems.
Or racking up debt on
debt.
overdraft fees.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't mean to laugh. This is not a laughing matter. I've actually lived this experience, so I'm well aware.
Yeah, me too. There's only two responses you can have to a situation like this. You either like laugh or cry. So
or both at the same time, where I've done that too.
Some days can be a roller coaster.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people are struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Like the government hasn't helped to the degree that is actually like realistic. Yeah, I would say that the situation it's definitely not better. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
And it's very likely worse.
Well, and I'm also thinking about, not just living check to check, but, as you pointed out, some people have taken a job just to take a job, so they're underemployed. But wage growth has stagnated since, I want to say, 1972. Is that right?
Yeah, not all economists agree about this, but
yeah,
the most optimistic analysis that I've seen says that wages have grown 30% since roughly not the early 70s. I don't personally agree with that, but even if you do take that as the truth, over that same time frame, the cost of living, the actual lived cost of building a life for yourself, healthcare, for example, has increased by 600% relative to that 30% growth.
Right.
Education, 400%. Housing, 200% on average. Childcare, 300%. So this is actually a very important distinction, because it's not, in our country, we talk a lot about income disparity and income growth, as we should, because it's a big problem.
Yes.
It's just not the only problem.
Right.
It's also about where that money goes and how far it goes.
Mm-hmm. And
Today,
I was going to say, like, we have these lovely little devices in our pockets that we didn't used to have, and they cost a lot of money, and almost everyone has one. So
it's essential.
Yeah, exactly. So Nick at the top of the program mentioned the Gartner data, which says that 4% of large US companies are using this tool, on-demand pay, but that number is expected to rise to 20% by 2023, which is, as we know, not very far away. Time flies when you're not having fun. Why do you think the popularity is growing so quickly, though? I mean, is maybe unlike the stagnant wages and people living check to check, is the trend pandemic related?
I think so, yeah. I think that what the pandemic has done is make the problem of the majority of American people and the majority of the workforce, therefore, being financially struggling, that was not obvious before to people who are not struggling themselves, as most executives of Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies are not. And the pandemic has made, it's brought this problem to light. And in my experience anyway, like, most executives are good people and they want to be doing the right thing. Being an executive is just also very hard. Like, there's a lot of pressure on you. You have to focus on the problems that are most important to your business and your domain. And if this problem wasn't obvious before, that focus wasn't going to be placed on it. It is obvious now. I'm seeing a lot of CEOs, CHROs, COOs, CFOs, who, as soon as they learn about the fact that, look, like, the majority of your workforce is living paycheck to paycheck, and they're being taken advantage of by predatory financial products, has spurred them to action. And they also intuitively, especially among CHROs and CEOs, they intuitively understand, hey, this is going to be good for my business if I solve this problem. So I do think it's pandemic related, yes.
I'm mostly hearing about retailers and companies that have a lot of hourly workers using these tools. What kind of other companies are using them?
Well, more than half of the American workforce makes inconsistent income from paycheck to paycheck, which is, it makes it very, very difficult to deal with living paycheck to paycheck if you make inconsistent income, because it makes it very difficult to plan ahead. And so you're much more vulnerable to things happening to you, because you can't, by definition, can't plan for them very well. And so you are really seeing workforces across many different verticals starting to adopt a solution like this. For example, manufacturing, which has a lot of hourly workers, even technology, like there's big customer service teams that are hourly workers. Oftentimes salespeople have volatile income as well. Certainly food service, logistics. I mean, America runs on hourly workers. So this is definitely not just a retail thing. I think, retail and Walmart in particular were the early adopters here. But especially in the past 12 months, we've seen big name brand lighthouse customers adopting it across every vertical.
Of course, then that begs the question about if we are talking about a lot of hourly workers, and the retailers that were early adopters tended to be the ones that were not in favor of raising the minimum wage. Mm-hmm. And others are doubling down $15 minimum wage rather than offering on-demand pay. So talk a little bit about how the two stack up in terms of meeting long-term financial goals and closing the wealth gap, like I talked about at the beginning. Like,
yeah,
are they mutually exclusive? Can those two things happen together?
Not
Obviously,
only
that sounds like the best solution.
So here's the thing, like, not only are they not mutually exclusive, if we want to actually help people build stability and resilience in their life, you have to do both of these things. Like, I think a lot of people don't realize the median wage of an even member is actually like $18 an hour. So raising the minimum wage to $15 is important, and I believe we should do that. But it isn't going to solve this problem of people living paycheck to paycheck. The majority of Americans who live paycheck to paycheck today make more than the median income and are middle class. Because again, it is not just about how much money you have. It is also about how far that money goes and where it goes. And there's other issues as well. This is a very complicated problem. It's difficult to wrap your head around. I don't have my head wrapped fully around it, and I have been researching this thing tirelessly for the past 7 years. But there are other problems as well. The fact that we don't teach you how to manage your money, for example, ever. That's nuts. The fact that the tools for managing your money tend to be very unapproachable and difficult to use, because the financial institutions which provide them happen to be making a lot of money from people's struggles. Americans spend $240 billion every year just on short-term credit products for making ends meet. So it shouldn't be a huge surprise that the current generation of financial institutions are not eagerly solving this problem. And we've only really scratched the surface of what is contributing to so many Americans struggling. So yes, absolutely, we need to raise income. Like if you take the $7.25 federal minimum wage that I believe is from like the 80s and do that in today's dollars, it's like $25. No wonder.
No one's calculating the rate of inflation for that. They're just, they're just keeping it at $7.25, which is astounding to me. And I think it's not quite the 80s, but not far past that.
Yeah.
But you mentioned this thing about we're not teaching people how to manage their money. People don't have financial literacy. some of the apps, and I believe even is included in this, not only offer the ability to draw from earned wages, but they do have financial planning tools. So how does that all work? And how does it
It's
help?
the thing.
Yeah.
So what one of our first customers was Walmart, and what is a blessing about having Walmart as a customer is they really don't like paying for things which don't help their business. And that's not sarcasm. Like, it actually is a blessing because they are very sophisticated as an HR function of evaluating the efficacy of the things that they choose to invest in. And they ran a study which Bloomberg recently reported on, looking at whether even helped with the retention of new employees.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Go ahead.
They found a very surprising result, which is that when employees only used on-demand pay, that actually made turnover worse. But when people had good information and the ability to act on that information to make good decisions about how to plan ahead and manage their money,
right,
turnover went way down. And so, like, the value of the Even app is that we are giving you good information when you need it very easily, and then we let you take action with that information. That action might be, hey, I have a cash flow problem and I need some money. But the goal of the app is to make it so that over time that stops happening to you because you have better information and you can plan ahead. We're not going to magically take people who are, making even $15, $18 an hour and help them have a net worth of $1 million. Like, this is just an app. Like, we're not magicians, but it is a very effective app at helping provide certainty, reduce anxiety, and increase people's ability to, deal with the curveballs that life throws at them constantly, and reduce how vulnerable they are. And that's a very good feeling if you are living your life on the edge all the time and you're super anxious about whether or not you're going to be okay. And all of a sudden you're a little bit less anxious about that, and you're a little bit more certain that you are going to be okay. You're going to like your job more. And that's what the Walmart study found. And so, like, the takeaway should not be don't offer on-demand pay. It's going to make turnover go up. The takeaway should be you need a safety net such that people can get money if they need it. And also you need to help people not be in that situation all the time. And you will be rewarded if you make that investment in your workforce.
So I'm an anxious person, and
Same.
I am, it's in the DNA. And let's say, hypothetically, I'm one of those $18 an hour workers. Walk me through how Even is going to give me peace of mind, because my employer does not offer this benefit.
Okay, so it would be hard to do this without making this like a sales pitch, but I'm gonna try really hard to just like stay very matter of
Well,
fact.
no, I kind of want sort of like an anecdote. Like, say, I'm driving down the road, my car blew a tire, and I don't know how I'm going to pay for a $300 replacement because I've got zero money after I paid rent and my phone bill and cable and whatever else I had going on, and I have $20 left to buy food. So tell me how this is going to help me.
Okay, so first and foremost, if you're in that situation today and you don't have access to something like Even, your problem gets worse, substantially worse. Like, you're bleeding, and your bleeding is gonna get much worse, because to get your $300, you're gonna have to take out a loan, which costs you $1,000. And remember, you didn't even have $300. So where are you gonna get $1,000 from? You also essentially have to pay that loan back when you get paid, which means that you won't have any money when you get paid. So you're just kicking the can down the road. If you worked at an employer that offered Even or something like it, you would have access to an app which allows you to see how much money you are going to have when you get paid, which is actually very difficult to know today, which is nuts, by the way. Like,
well, I mean, when you get your pay stub electronically, you see what your net pay is. So
a lot of people, especially hourly, don't get their pay stub until like 2 days before payroll runs, or actually it's 2 days before the paycheck lands.
Okay.
And planning ahead 2 days is better than not planning ahead.
Right, but it's still tight.
When you have a razor thin margin, as people do today, because wages haven't grown and expenses have, 2 days is not enough planning ahead. There's too many things that can cause you to run out of money. So you really do need to be like a week, at least a week and a half, ideally. And a lot of folks actually don't even see net pay on the pay stub. They only see gross pay because the payroll system just doesn't spit out net pay for whatever reason. It's not like that's hard to do. It just doesn't do it. These are like what seem like fairly trivial problems, but they compound into a pretty significant thing. Like, try planning ahead when you don't know how much money you're going to have.
Right. Yeah.
And so we would have solved that problem for you. You would be able to look in the app and see, hey, I'm going to have $800 deposited in my bank account on Friday.
Okay.
And then you would have a button there which says, like, get some of this now. And you would be able to take the $300 now. And it would be immediately available for you to spend for free. You're not paying anything for it. And so you solve your cash flow problem without any bleeding. You're not spending any additional money. Payday loans, by the way, are not the only villain in this story. I actually think the bigger and more prevalent issue is overdraft fees, because what can happen is if you go and swipe your debit card to pay for the tire, you're going to get hit with a $35 overdraft fee. Now, that doesn't sound that bad until you realize that every subsequent transaction that hits your account while you are in that state, which you will be until you get paid on Friday, will be an additional $35. And so they will then add additional long-term overdraft fees on top of each $35 fee, to where that one debit card swipe could end up costing you like $1,500. This is not hypothetical. We see this all the time with people coming into using eDIT. And so, like, what are you supposed to do about that? You're like working really hard. You're trying to be a responsible adult. And then like something happens to you that's completely outside of your control, and you just get absolutely screwed because of it. It almost makes you like, you say like, what is even the point? What am I doing this for? What am I getting up every day and working at this for? I'm not making any progress. I'm going backwards. That's what goes through people's head. In my opinion, it's very reasonable. It's what psychologists would call learned helplessness. It makes people disengage. And so if you care a lot about the engagement of your employees, not only with their job, but with their life generally, you have to help them solve these problems. And further, the point of eVIT is to help you build savings so that the next time this happens to you, you don't have to go through any of this crap. You just swipe your debit card.
Well, I was thinking about that too, because I have been hammered by those nasty overdraft fees in the past. And it's very seductive when you sign up for an account to have overdraft protection, because they tell you, oh, your card can't be refused up to X amount of overdrafting. So you never have the embarrassment of standing at the counter and having the salesperson hand your card back to you and say, sorry, this was declined. But as you say, you're racking up these enormous charges. And so I think that, what's the employer's responsibility here to teach that kind of financial literacy? That's as you said, it's a very simple thing, but it can really hammer you. And I don't think a lot of people really understand that entire process.
Yeah, the understanding thing is critically important. It's very easy to look down on people who are spending $35 on an overdraft fee because they swipe their card when they don't have any money. Until you actually live that, and you're standing in line and there's people behind you and your card gets declined, in that moment, I don't think there are many people who wouldn't pay $35 to just be able to not be super embarrassed. That's why overdraft protection is such a scam. But it is it's a worthwhile product that gets used a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's way better than the alternative until now. With even or something like it, although there really isn't anything else on the market today which provides this kind of information in this way that I'm about to describe. Again, I'm trying to not make this like a sales pitch.
No, but I do. One of my future questions is going to be about your competitors. So, you know, if you wanna...
You shouldn't be in that situation in the first place. Because you're a responsible adult, you should just have access to the information that you need in order to not be in that situation in the first place. And that information should cost you nothing. The only reason the bank doesn't give you the good information or presents it in a way which requires so much effort or like emotional toll on your part to figure it out is because they make $35 when you don't. This isn't rocket science. Like Charlie Munger, who's the partner to Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway, has famously said, like, in business, never spend any time thinking about anything when you should be thinking about the power of incentives. Financial institutions are incentivized to keep working Americans struggling today because they make a lot of money from that struggle. Standing in line at the grocery store and having to pay the $35 overdraft fee to not be super embarrassed is what capitalizing on that struggle looks like in real life. And when you really start to look at even versus the other competitors, if you want to go there, the key difference, if you take one thing away from this webinar today, is that we don't make money when people take their pay early. So we don't have an incentive to keep them in a situation where they need to. Which, to be clear, you only need to take your pay early if you don't have any money, which means you're struggling. We actually lose money when people take their pay early, which incentivizes us as a business to help people build savings so they don't need to. So they don't need to take their pay early. That is the ultimate differentiator.
It doesn't sound like a sales pitch, but I do have more questions. We are at the 30-minute mark though, so I wanted to see if Nick wanted to come back on and do our sponsor and survey spiel, if he's available. Perhaps not. All right. Well, anyway, folks, we are at the half-hour mark, and if you have burning questions for Jon or me, I'm just a reporter though, please drop them in the Q&A box, and we'll try to get to as many as we can before we wrap everything up. So, okay, yeah. So back to this notion of, you know, the benefit versus, you know, what the employer's getting and what is incentivizing you. You know, it's supposed to be a better alternative to predatory payday loans or certainly bank overdraft fees. But this other app, which shall remain nameless, was facing a class action suit because users alleged that they were paying bank fees. And so the suit was settled out of court, but the question remains, are there fees associated with this? You're saying that Even does not have any fees. I mean, is there potential in any way for an employee to be charged for using anything?
So I'm not familiar with that suit specifically because they settled out of court and it was never made public. I can imagine though what people were complaining about, rightfully so, which is that the way that direct-to-consumer on-demand pay companies work is that they say that there are no fees, they ask you to tip them, And then they are really good at designing the product in such a way that you don't have a choice but to tip. And so we actually see in our data that with the on-demand pay direct-to-consumer apps, people are spending somewhere between like $15 and $30 a month just for the privilege of getting the money that they've earned. And also, because those apps don't have an integration with the employer, they have no relationship with the employer in many cases, they're debiting the money that they advanced you from your bank account via ACH, which is a very difficult payment method to get the timing right. And so what can happen is they give you $100, payday comes, they try to take $100 out of your account, but your rent already hit your account. So you don't have $100 left. And so you get hit with an overdraft fee. I think that's what people are concerned with. That's not how Even works, though. We integrate directly with the payroll system. It's actually a fairly lightweight integration. You don't change anything about how you run payroll. You just add another payroll deduction. And so that completely avoids the possibility that we are overdrafting people's accounts because the money is never deposited in their account. And I think there's another aspect of like the no fees thing. How we make money is a monthly subscription, just like Netflix. We actually go what I think is the extra mile and unsubscribe people if they're not using the app in a given month. So this isn't like a gym membership where you like sign up once and then never go and you pay $60 a month or whatever it is for like a year and because you
So
forgot.
what kind of data are you collecting to know that somebody's not using it? Like they're just not opening it at all, or they're just clicking once and going away?
If they don't take any action in the app, they don't pay. It's as simple as that. And so who pays for this subscription depends on where you work. Most employers today are actually choosing to subsidize 100% of it. And so 99% of the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of active Even members that we have are using it for free. So they're getting access to the planning, scheduling, the budgeting, the savings features, and yes, InstaPay, the solution that replaces payday loans and overdraft fees, for free, 100% free. There are no other fees. This isn't like a trick. It's just free because we're making money from working with the employer.
You talked a little bit about what sets you apart, obviously. Are there any other practices that your company avoids just as a matter of principle, fees notwithstanding?
Yeah, well, I mean, the reason that we want to be a subscription is because that incentivizes us the right way. So like the way that this works, it's like a fairly nerdy thing actually, and I'll try to make it as not nerdy as possible, but I don't know how possible. We'll try. The way that it works is when someone takes an InstaPay, because of like the nature of that transaction and the fact that we're advancing money, it actually costs us a lot every time someone does it. And so let's say for the sake of discussion that Even is $10 a month. It's not actually $10 a month. The price varies depending on what employers choose to do. Just like other software as a service businesses. But let's say just to make the math easy, it's $10. If you're using InstaPay 4 or 5 times in a month, we're going to lose money on that $10 that we are earning by having you as a member. But if we're helping you use the other features to get good information about how much money you're going to have, make a plan such that you see what's coming ahead and you don't waste money. When I use the word waste, I mean like to credit cards, overdraft fees, payday loans. That's actually a sort of a variable that we've defined as waste. Sort of like carrying your money around in a bucket and the bucket having a hole in the bottom and just falling out. If you're not wasting that money, you have more margin to actually spend on the things you need to live. You'll have a positive cash flow, which essentially means that you're living within your means. Like saving money is not rocket science. You just have to spend less than you make. It's just very difficult to do that in real life when you don't make that much money and life is extremely expensive and you often make inconsistent amounts of money and you don't have good visibility into your income or your expenses because no one taught you how to do any of this, and the tools for doing it are really bad. And so we're solving many of those problems, which are giving people the power to live within their means, start saving money so that they can solve their problems with money they've saved instead of needing to take InstaPay. And then if we are successful in that, which we are a lot of the time, we make a great margin. So we help even members who often have a negative cash flow margin. They're losing money month over month coming into using the program. And 3 months later, they will have moved $163 in cold hard cash into their even savings account. The average emergency fund that the Fed suggests the typical American family should have is like $400. So we're not there yet after 3 months. Like I said, this isn't magic. Like there's a lot of forces working against people saving money. We are not solving all of them today, but we have taken a very, very good first step. And we have many more steps to come.
There's this debate about making smarter financial decisions, and I just have to ask because I love to hear the answer to this question. Sally Krawcheck, who helms Ellevest, she had penned a piece by the latte, and a lot of people will criticize those who buy $5 coffees in the morning as not making smart decisions. Can an app like even help with that like granular type of purchase? Like, does that make sense in the scheme of things?
Yes, but we don't do it directly. Like we don't tell you not to buy $5 lattes, and I'll tell you why. So I'm a psychologist by training. That's what I studied. And when you start to learn about like the way the brain works, the first thing you realize is that we have no idea how the brain works. Basically, everything is interrelated. So like the way you feel about your money is related to your physical health, is related to your mental health, is related to the way you feel about lattes. And like, that's a pretty abstract way to think about this. Let's talk about it in like real terms. If I am not making a lot of money, and I'm really stressed out all the time about the fact that I don't have money in my bank account, and because I don't have a lot of money in my bank account, there are very few things I can do to like make it feel like I get anything, any luxury, any break. In that context, spending $5 to treat yourself on a coffee ain't half bad, actually. Like, in the grand scheme of things, you might even say, I would say as a psychologist, that that's actually a pretty effective use of your money if it's really making you feel better. $5 is pretty cheap. Therapy costs a lot more than that.
Yeah,
it's actually
for sure.
unaffordable.
Yeah.
And so like what is important about the way that even works is that it is not judgmental at all.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't know what your life is like, and we're not going to pretend.
Okay.
What we're going to do is give you good information, which allows you to have less anxiety about stuff, so that all the stuff that's interrelated in your brain, the way you're feeling and the way that causes you to do stuff, let's just bring the stress level down a little bit. And maybe you'll be like, I don't really need the $5 latte today.
Right.
I can make coffee at home. Because there's a foundational principle of the way I've approached designing the product, which is that we're all responsible adults. Like we all want to do the right thing. It's just actually kind of hard to figure out what that is a lot of the time. And then there's lots of forces working against us that make it really hard to do. And so like, let's not judge people. Let's just make it easier to do and give people a better idea of what they should.
Right. Well, you said almost at the beginning that most employers want to do the right thing as well, just like most people want to do the right thing financially. So other than boosting retention, as some organizations have noticed, what's the key selling point here especially for HR leaders that are considering adding this benefit to their menu?
the key selling point, other than the fact that like it's the right thing to do and it really helps your people, and also as a result you'll have improved retention?
Okay, John.
The key,
One
that was a little snarky. I'm sorry. The key selling point is that this is something which is actually going to meaningfully help your people improve the foundational quality of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Like every single HR leader that I've talked to, I don't need to break that out for them.
Okay.
Like they understand. Usually it's just an issue of prioritization.
Well, and I was going to say, how do you make the business case for it? Because I think that especially for some organizations where it's, HR is a department of one, they've got to push that rock uphill. So what's the business case for it?
The number one, if you want to make the business case, actually, this is an answer which you maybe is unexpected. And maybe it will be difficult to do if you're an HR team of one. So I'll give a second answer afterwards. But the number one thing you can do to make the business case has nothing to do with like writing a report or like showing that you might be able to achieve 15-to-1 ROI, which Walmart did. Actually, the number one thing you could do is like take the CFO and have them go to a check cashing store and try to live that life for even like an hour. That's the number one thing you could do if you want to get this prioritized by the executive team. That sounds kind of crazy. I actually don't think it's crazy. We've actually done that with a lot of companies.
Yeah.
And there are some like the Center for Financial Services Innovation, which is now called the Financial Health Network. They also run a program that does that.
Okay.
So it's actually not crazy.
Okay. But in case no one's really, game for walking over to the local check cashing place, what's another way to do this?
The reason why that's so effective is like when you are in those shoes, someone who is dealing with not having money and needing it desperately and being in that state all the time, there are only so many like buttons you can push to improve your situation. There's only so many levers you can pull. And one of them, the most obvious one, the one that's like flashing red in front of your face, is your job. So you're going to try whatever you can to get a better job, even for like 30 cents an hour more. Which when you like sit here and like think about it rationally, doesn't make a whole lick of sense. But this like, living in a state of constant stress and anxiety about whether or not you and your family are going to be okay, that ain't rational at that point. The number, like we have demonstrated at the nation's largest employer with a study of over 250,000 employees over 12 months, controlling for more than 100 potentially confounding variables. Walmart demonstrated essentially like a 15-to-1 ROI for the dollars that they invested in this program. And talk is cheap, right? Like I'm super biased because this is like my baby. Like I've been working on this thing for like 7 years. Obviously, I'm going to sit here and tell you it's good. Talk is cheap. Actions speak much louder than words. When Walmart did this study, they increased the percentage of even that they were paying for from 25% to 100%. So
and all of their hourly workers get it?
Their entire workforce gets it. You actually don't even need to be hourly.
Okay.
And in fact, salaried employees at Walmart adopt even at a slightly higher rate than hourly. They have a much smaller salaried workforce, but
right. Well, let me ask you this: for these HR, there's the cat.
We were saying earlier in the call, man, this is Fuzzy Man, everybody, that he loves to be on webinars. And,
yes, he's a guest star. So for these HR leaders that are considering it, twofold question: what are some of the pitfalls that they should know to avoid? And the other side is, what are some best practices for onboarding employees when they receive the benefit? So pitfalls and onboarding best practices.
Biggest pitfall. The thing is, if I make him go away, he'll just come back even stronger next time.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. He's got to show us his butt. It's all going to be good. There you go.
All right. So biggest pitfalls. A lot of HR leaders, when they first get introduced to this concept, this idea of like giving your people advances on their pay, it feels very icky to them. That is a healthy reaction, in my opinion. It feels icky because just giving folks a slightly more affordable way to access credit, just doing that is actually kind of icky, because you as an employer are essentially endorsing, explicitly or not, the fact that people will pay money to get money they've earned. And I personally have a problem with that. And I wouldn't do it that way. That's why even is designed and set up the way that it is. And the reason why it's icky is, again, because let's say where we started this conversation is you're on the way to work, Lydia, and you get a flat tire. We're carpooling, you and me. I'm your friend. I happen to have $300 in my pocket. And so we're at the gas station, and you're like, you find out from the mechanic that a new tire is going to be $300. And I say, hey, I have $300. I'll give it to you right now, and you can pay me back on payday, but it's going to cost you $4.
Mm.
So you open up your
or the price of our friendship.
Yeah, and so you open up your bank app, and you see that you actually have $300 in your savings account. Which of those two things are you going to want to do? Take my money for $4, or just use your money for $300 or for free? And which one of those things am I going to want you to do? I'm going to want to make my $4 because I'm a shitty friend.
Then see ya.
but you're gonna want to just use your own money. This is why it's icky. Because if I run an earned wage access company that makes $4 every time someone takes their pay early, I'm gonna want to keep people in a situation where they have to keep paying me $4. And that doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It just means I'm running a business. That's why it is critically important to look at the incentives of how the vendor you choose has structured their business. We make less money when people are stuck. We make more money when they have money saved and they can just use their savings account dollars to pay for a new tire. So that's the biggest pitfall. Probably the second biggest pitfall is related to the adoption question. Like dealing with a benefit about how you manage your money every day is actually quite challenging because we don't talk about our money. It's like taboo. So you can't just roll this out and expect that a huge percentage of your workforce is going to adopt it, because people are naturally going to be really skeptical of the fact that, like, my employer is doing what? Trying to help me with what? So you actually do need to care about this. And if you can't prioritize it, you can't prioritize it. But if you're gonna prioritize it, you actually have to do the work of explaining to your people what this thing is and why you're offering it. And the key to that really is involving managers, frontline managers, arming them with the information about what this thing is and why it's helpful. When you do that, we're seeing right now at Walmart, even is second only to 401k in terms of adoption. And we're actually on pace to pass 401k this year. And that's because Walmart learned this stuff. They really utilize their frontline managers. And then the product really takes care of itself, because once people get sort of over the initial hump of being comfortable with it, with even the idea of being offered something like this from their employer, the product just helps so much that it tends to spread quite organically throughout the workforce.
We got a couple of questions from the audience. One of them you've already answered, but another one is, what kind of support is offered to employees if they have difficulties or issues in the app?
Yeah, so we have a team that we call the member advisors. They're available via chat directly in the app. This is another potential pitfall. If you're doing research, like if you're already decided to do an on-demand pay implementation and you're doing research into the different vendors that are available to you, I would strongly encourage you to look at the Better Business Bureau complaint volume for each of the vendors, and then look at the number of people that actually each of these vendors serves. To put it bluntly, the vendors make a lot of claims, which they can't really substantiate about the number of people that they actually serve. Look at the App Store ratings, the number of App Store ratings. That's like a pretty good way to tell how many people are actually using this thing. When you look at the number of complaints that people have about Even relative to the other vendors, we are by far the least. Like on average, we have 1 complaint per like 100,000 people, and the others have tens more than that. And we also have like 100,000 reviews, and they have like 5,000. So don't take the quality of customer service that the vendor provides lightly. Don't take it lightly. Our member advisor team is very highly trained, college-educated, American-based, Even employees, and they just do a phenomenal job. Like I really, they're the team in the company that I love gushing about the most, and it shows in how people, talk about using Even publicly relative to how they talk about using many of these other services.
There's a follow-up question. Is there member support for the non-tech savvy, phone support rather than chat support for slow typers and slow adopters?
No, we don't have phone support right now, mostly because we actually haven't had much demand for it. We don't, this is gonna sound really salesy because it's sort of unbelievable. We actually get a very, very low percentage of customers, or we call them members, but like you would typically call them customer support tickets per active user. And as a result, like we just don't have much demand for customer service generally. And we have had phone service like wouldn't be hard to add. Like certainly the people that work, the member advisor team is like 25 people. They could easily do phones. We actually even have the infrastructure for it. There just isn't the need.
Here's your next iteration. I'm feeling it.
Maybe. I mean, we could we experimented with it a little bit in like 2018. It just hasn't been necessary. In fact, a lot of the service that we provide, you actually don't even need to talk to someone. You can always talk to someone if you want to immediately. Like we're not like Comcast. We don't like make you press like 30 different buttons in order to talk to a human. But a lot of times, like in this day and age, especially when you're in a situation where you're super stressed out about something, you actually like don't want to talk to a human. You want to just like deal with the situation and move on with your life.
Very, very, very true. Very true.
So we really have gone out of our way to ensure that the number of issues that do drive customer support volume just have a clear path to resolution that doesn't require talking to anyone on the phone or in text message or otherwise.
Okay.
But look, if things change, like we can easily add phone support. It just we haven't seen the need so far.
Well, with that, we need to invite Nick back on because we need to wrap it up. This hour has gone very quickly. Thank you for talking to me, Jon.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Lydia. Thanks, Jon, for that great conversation. As a proud Gen Xer, I would say that I have had to learn that nobody wants to talk to anybody on the phone anymore. That's a cultural thing that's happened in my lifetime. So I agree with Jon very much on that. Thanks again to Jon, and thanks to our sponsor, Even, and to all of you guys for participating today out in the audience there. Thanks again to those of you guys that filled out our survey. I'm going to just drop that into chat one last time. If you didn't get a chance to get to it, click on it now. If you don't have time right now, open it in a browser, take it later. But we'd love to hear from you. Really would love to hear from you. If you would like to join us for more virtual events in the future, you can head to our website. That's fromday1.co, FROMDAYONE.co, and check out more of our upcoming webinars and conferences. Speaking of which, next week on Wednesday, March 24th, we'll be doing our monthly full-scale virtual conference. These are our conferences that run for about 5.5 hours throughout the day and have panel discussions, workshops, networking, chat, and a lot of things on the Hopin platform that we use. So the focus this month is on how to build authentic leaders, the role of HR. You can visit our website. Again, that's fromday1.co to learn more. The The week following, on Tuesday, March 30th, we'll be covering the topic of embedding diversity and equity into all your benefits for all families. And you can find info on that, register on our website, and there's many more coming up for the rest of the month and the rest of the year. Thanks again, everyone, and please stay healthy out there. This is From Day One.